I run Empowered STEM. Empowered STEM is an A-level course provider. We provide A-level courses in chemistry, biology, physics, and maths for those students who want to enroll in medical, dental, veterinary, financial, and engineering programs at the chosen university in the UK. So today, in this live stream, I wanted to come in and have a conversation with you about why the first 4 weeks of school are the most important ones to your teen, why they matter so much. Now, parents, most parents think that the most important month in the academic school year obviously must be the exam months, the month where they put the exam, the end of the academic year, right? Makes sense? Well, I do disagree because studies show that the first 4 weeks have a bigger impact on your teen's final grades than the rest of the months. So stay with me to the end of this live stream, and what I'll do is I'll show you how your teen can build consistency, confidence, and long-term achievement habits in the first 4 weeks to set themselves up for A-star success in A-level maths and A-level science. What you can do as a parent to help your teen get the most out of the academic school year and the most out of the first month, September. At Empowered STEM, we always use neuroscience, we're always using academic coaching, we're always using educational theory to help your teen earn these top grades that we talk about. So what's the science behind the fact that the month of September is the most important one for your teen? Simple. It's a science of early momentum. So neuroscientists have figured out that the brain reacts powerfully to early patterns and routines. So in September, your teen has a choice. They can either create automatic habits, which is what they're going to do anyway, that set themselves up for academic success, a solid foundation, so they get the A and the A-star, or they can form habits that are not going to help them academically, that's going to cause them to spiral downwards and earn the E or the U in A-level maths and science. And the second point is that in the first 4 weeks, your teen forms an academic identity for the year. Now, this is the important bit. In September, your teen will form an academic identity for the year that's going to stay with them throughout the entire academic year. It's either going to be the academic identity of, yes, I can do this. I am capable of doing A-level maths and A-level science and earning those top grades. Or they're going to have an academic identity based on the failure that they have. And then all of a sudden think, I can't do it. I'm not smart enough to do A-level maths and A-level science. So parents, what we need to do then is we need to help your teen start the academic school year strong, because it's simple. If your teen starts the school year strong with the right habits and the right identity in place, the rest of the school year becomes easier. Not easy, but easier. If, on the other hand, the start to the academic school year is shaky, they're not really on solid ground, then what happens is that the rest of the academic school year, well, it feels like catch up. They're always behind the 8 ball. Something else to consider is this, is that the content load peaks early. So if you're in year 12, let's say you're in year 12 A-level chemistry, there is a huge jump between GCSE chemistry and A-level chemistry. This is what I mean by the content load peaks. It's a huge jump that they've got to climb just to be able to get to A-level chemistry, right? In year 13, the teacher is going to assume that your teen knows the content of year 12 because they've got to move on in the course syllabus. They have a target. At the end of the year, they have to get through everything in the course syllabus. So teachers naturally introduce new concepts and new ideas early, at the beginning of the academic school year, September. They also introduce the difficult concepts because it's that jump that we're talking about. If you're talking about year 12, the concept is difficult because they haven't seen it before and they're having to put a synoptic link between the year 12 A-level chemistry and the GCSE. And then they build on it. In year 13, it's difficult because the teacher is now forming a synoptic link, a bridge between the year 13 content and the year 12 content, and then is building on it. So there's a horizontal jump between year 12 GCSE, year 13 GCSE, the synoptic link, and then there's a vertical jump because all of a sudden the concept is getting more difficult because they're pushing your teen towards being university ready. And if your teen is missing these foundations in the first 4 weeks, everything else becomes harder. It was explained to me this way. Somebody was telling me how if a student can't read at grade level, they can't read at the level that they should be at, how difficult it is for them to progress academically up the ranks. And so they said, right, Graham, hold out your hand like this. Right. The top student can read the 5 words. And so the sentence makes sense to them. Now imagine all of a sudden that you can't read, say, 2 words. You're going to read 3 words out of 5. Or maybe your reading falls behind and it's 4 words out of 5. All of a sudden, you're thinking, it doesn't make sense to you. And so because they've lost a foundation in reading, higher level thinking in English becomes more difficult. Well, you can translate this over to A-level maths and science. If they don't have the foundation at GCSE, they don't have the foundation in year 12, then by the time they get to year 13, it's really difficult for them. They're really behind the 8 ball. Or even if you look inside the academic school year, if they don't get the beginning of it right, say year 12 or year 13, by the time they reach the end of year 12, by the time they reach the end of year 13, it's really difficult for them to grasp the concepts, put the synoptic links together, and move up the ranks to the A and the A star. Because when the content clicks, when they get the concept, when the content clicks, the rest of the curriculum, it just becomes more manageable. Not easy, but more manageable. So if you have a solid foundation at the beginning of year 12, for example, say the autumn term, well then the winter term and the spring term becomes easier because you've got a solid foundation that you're working from. Now, something else is this, is that not only do they introduce concepts at the beginning of the school year that are difficult, you got the horizontal and the vertical jump. But the issue is gaps begin to multiply quickly. We can go back to the reading example. Can you imagine as you go through the ranks of school, if you can't read properly, how more and more difficult it becomes? But in A-level maths and science is also the same thing. Small gaps start to get bigger and bigger as you go through the academic school year. So this is why at Empowered STEM, what we use is that we use something called precision diagnosis. And it's the very first step of our pathway at Empowered STEM. Precision diagnosis is this, is where we diagnose where your teen is in the academic realm of A-level chemistry, biology, physics, and maths. Where are they academically? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What are the gaps that we need to fill so your teen has a solid foundation? Because, like I said, small gap in year 12, your teen may not worry about too much. It begins to multiply out until in the end, by the end of year 12, the gaps have now stacked on top of each other like plates. And it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger because they don't get the first concept, the second concept, and all the concepts they do tend to link to the previous ones. By the end of year 12 or the end of year 13, your teen is going to have gaps in the knowledge the size of the Grand Canyon. And obviously, you can understand that this is going to be a really, well, bad news for the grades. Okay? So, small gaps lead to bigger gaps further on down the academic school year. But the issue is this, is that teens, they don't tend to realize that the knowledge is slipping until it's too late. And so when you're a teen, if you're talking to your son or your daughter and you say, well, how did it go on the test in A-level chemistry or biology? How did you do at school this week? And they go, nah, I didn't get this one, Mom, Dad, gotta be honest, I got a bad grade on it. I'm really upset about it. Okay. If they don't fix that gap in the knowledge, it's always going to be there and it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Because a 5% gap, say a 5% gap in year 12, well, by the time you get to the end of the year 12 academic school year, say, for example, April, May, going into exams, all of a sudden, this 5% gap, it becomes a 25% gap in the knowledge, which means that now we have issues. So we understand the gaps, they can multiply quickly. We understand that the teacher is going to introduce the new knowledge at the beginning of the academic school year. And so what we need to do, parents, is we need to get in there and we need to help your teen be successful. And the best way that we can do this is by helping them create habits which empower them, habits which support them on their journey up to the A or the A star. Now, habits, the quote that I like to use is this one, and it's mine. All right. Motivation fades, but habits never die. So your teen may be motivated at the beginning of year 12. They may be motivated at the beginning of year 13. Fantastic. But motivation dies. They've done studies on it. People that go to these motivational seminars, after the motivational seminars ended, within 30, 60, 90 days, the motivation is like dropped all the way back down. So basically they are where they were before they took the seminar. But habits never die because you have a habit. Your teen has a habit no matter what it is. And so either they have a habit that they study or they have a habit that they don't study. So when it comes to studying, you can't not have a habit. You have to have one. It's either or. So habits, from the neuroscience, and we talked about this one in the previous live stream, habits come from repetition and reward. It's a dopamine release in the brain, which is the reward that you get from repeating a habit. And so your teen has a choice. Either they're going to make this a good habit which supports them, or is they going to have a bad habit which does not support them. And when do these habits form? These habits form in the first 4 weeks. The first 4 weeks of the academic school year is when they form these habits, is when they form this academic identity. And these habits are formed really, really quickly, like this. Either you study that night or you don't study that night. Either you believe you can do it or you don't believe you can do it. And so we need to be really, really careful and marshal what your teen thinks about the habits and help them create habits which actually support them. Because students who are, say, inconsistent with their study habits, I'll study tonight, A-level chemistry. No, maybe I won't. I'll take the night off. Oh, I'll do biology tomorrow. Yeah, maybe I'll get around to maths. Yeah, something else got in the way. Oh, I've got to do this. I want to hang out with my friends. I need some downtime. All right. Students who are inconsistent with their study habits, they don't form the pattern of success. It's harder to fix later on. Why? Because when you form a habit, parents, what you're doing is you're forming a neural pathway in the brain. And so every time you do the habit, then you are reinforcing that neural pathway. And so when you come in and now you want to change that habit, it's more difficult. Why? Because you've got to do two things. Number one is you need to create a new habit, a new neural pathway, and then you need to stop going down the other neural pathway. And what we believe at Empowered STEM is this, is the first month of the academic school year is the month that's going to build the blueprint for the rest of the year. So how your teen starts at year 12 or year 13 in September, how they form their habits, how they form their academic identity is going to build the blueprint for the rest of the academic school year. And they have a choice, parents. They can either go down they can either have a blueprint, which is the blueprint for success, which is what we teach at Empowered STEM, or they can have a blueprint, which is the blueprint for failure. So, how exactly do we help them in the first 4 weeks? Yes, we can help them form a set of habits which are meaningful, which are empowering. We can help them form an academic identity, which is, again, empowering. It's solid. It's saying, yes, I can do this. It's the growth mindset, to quote Carol Dweck. But in the first 4 weeks, we can also help your teen shape their confidence. So again, this comes from psychology. It's something in part of psychology known as motivational theory. And it's this bit. If you want to build somebody's confidence up, what you do is that you give them early wins that build momentum. And so they start doing activities. They start, for example, doing activities, forming the habits which are successful. And then these habits, they lead into a belief, an academic identity that they can do this. And then the momentum builds. And so it's kind of like a circle, you know? So you've got the behavior, you've got the habit, you've got the belief, and it just loops around. And in the middle of it is momentum. And so what's going to happen is when your teen starts to get a few wins under the belt, for example, they said, yes, well, I did all my lessons this week. Check box, fantastic. Yeah, I also did my study. Also stuck to my study plan that we talked about in the previous live stream this week. Fantastic. Yes, I got my lab report written. I've got my homework submitted on time. Brilliant. Oh, I've got a test next week and I studied for that. I've revised for it. Brilliant. Building up the momentum. And yes, I got a good grade on this test. Great. They're off to a great start. Or on the other hand, if they don't form the right habits, they have a habit of not doing what they should be doing. So they have a bad habit, which then leads into a belief of, I can't do it, which is a lack of self-confidence. And then this leads into a lack of motivation. I don't want to keep doing it because I'm failing at it. And so you spiral downwards and you get less motivated until in the end you give up. Now, if we can correct the habit and make it a positive habit, then we avoid all the negative habits and we avoid the struggles, because in the first month, if they're struggling in the first month of the academic school year, then what's going to happen is that they're going to feed into the belief of self-doubt. And they're going to start saying, yes, you know what? I can't do it. Chemistry's hard. Oh, well, why did I sign up to be a doctor? I mean, honestly, have you seen this biology stuff, Graham? Right. And so they feed into this belief of self-doubt, and then they start forming limiting beliefs. So this is why at Empowered STEM, we have in our 4-step pathway, we have something called the medical mindset, which is this. The medical mindset is where we help your teen rewire how they think about their beliefs, their behaviors, their confidence, the habits, their motivation, and they start believing that, you know, they're on the path to being a doctor, a dentist, a veterinarian, a financial expert, an engineer, and their confidence grows. And so it is possible to turn it around. It does take a bit of work, but if we can increase your teen's confidence of what they're doing in their A levels, and I will admit it's kind of a jump from GCSE up to A level. If we can increase their confidence, then all of a sudden your teen's going to feel competent. They can do it. They're going to be practicing the positive habits. They'll be studying and revising daily. They'll be doing it consistently, and they'll be in control. They'll have autonomy of their learning. So parents, what exactly can parents do to help out their teens, the son, the daughter? Well, here we go then. Number one, look, as I always say this, what you don't want to be is the referee. Do not be the referee in the game with your son or your daughter handing out the red card because they're not studying, they're not revising, they're getting a poor grade in A-level chemistry, biology, physics, maths, whatever. Don't do that. What you've got to be is the coach on the sideline. You need to be the coach on the sideline, parents, where you're helping your teen become autonomous and work it out on their own and have their own responsibility for their learning. And so they can begin to walk the pathway to the A and the A star. So it's low stress actions that you can do to help your teen out. You can, for example, talked about this previous live stream, put a study plan together and a revision plan together, combine them both into one, put them on the fridge in the kitchen so you can all see what you're doing that week. Because as we discussed in the previous live stream, your teen, the area of the brain that works with organization is not fully developed, which means that they need your help. So we can help them by doing low stress actions. For example, have consistent start and finish times to studying. So say, right, tonight, yes, son, daughter, you are studying A-level chemistry. Oh, from after tea? All right, from 7 until 8. Fantastic. And then give them some quiet space, help them manage their phone usage, and they study A-level chemistry for an hour. Or maybe it's A-level biology for 90 minutes, right? What you don't want to do is see your teen up all night studying in their room with the light on, it's past midnight, and not say anything. You do want to say, well, son, daughter, really? Studying for extended periods of time is not going to get you the grade that you want because you're starting to get mentally tired and the amount of information that you can absorb is getting less and less. Help them use the principles of neuroscience when they study. For example, they can reread their notes 24 hours after the lesson and then 2 days after the lesson. Because we talked about this in the previous live stream, the memory curve of what students forget, it just begins to drop. And so after a couple of days, if they don't go in there and revise it, review it, then what's going to happen is that they're going to forget what the teacher talked about. Also, and this is the second part of our 4-step pathway, help them build clarity before revision. This one has to be like the most important one. Students have this idea that what they've got to do is, oh, yeah, I went to lesson, Graham. And, well, yeah, I've done the homework really quick. Yeah, I've done that, so we can turn that in, right? And then I'm going to memorize past papers and mark schemes. No. Okay. Because what happens is that they're memorizing what they don't understand. Doesn't help when it comes to the exam. On the other hand, think back to the beginning of this live stream when I talked about the gap, the size of the Grand Canyon. What they got to do is start to wind it backwards. It's like turning the dial back on the clock, right? By filling in the gaps in the knowledge until the gap in the knowledge is gone, they understand what they're doing. And once they understand it, once you have conceptual clarity, which is what we teach, once you have conceptual clarity, then they can revise, because then they will revise what they know. They will revise what they understand. And the information will move from the short term to the long-term memory. Help them, like I said, organize study schedules, revision plans. This is a strategic revision, which is the 3rd step of our 4-step pathway. Help them revise strategically. Like I said, memorizing mark schemes is a no-no. All right, we don't teach that because honestly, we know it doesn't work. Okay, but strategically revising a paper, like doing a paper under exam conditions, marking it, understanding what you got right, and reviewing and studying up on what you got wrong, you didn't understand it. This is how you want to be. Now, like I said, your role, parents, is not to be the referee. You don't want to micromanage your teen. Give them some autonomy. All right. You don't micromanage your teen. What you do is that you coach them. You coach your teen to academic success. You help them walk the pathway to the A and the A star in A level maths, biology, chemistry, physics. Okay. So as always, parents, do I have a story about whether this works? Well, of course I do. Let me tell you about Harry. Right, Harry. When he came to us, Harry, he'd taken his A level and he'd earned a D. Through no fault of his own, his school let him down. His chemistry teacher was ill, and so all he had was substitute teachers, a science technician that gave him a worksheet and say, go down to the library and teach yourself. And so he really didn't have the support that he needed. When Harry came to us, he was taking one of our A-level chemistry courses. The very first thing we had to do is help Harry organize his study habits because he was motivated. Oh, yeah. Harry was a motivated young man. Motivation, great. Didn't have the study habits, didn't have the revision habits, didn't have the conceptual clarity. He didn't know what he knew or what he didn't know. And so we had to build it into Harry. And then we also had to work with his medical mindset. We had to help him see, we had to rewire what had happened to him so we could see, yes, he was confident. He was competent at what he did. He had, if he worked at it consistently, he could get the top grades. And so when we did that, Harry, because we helped him with his study habits, revision strategies, conceptual clarity, medical mindset, Harry moved from a D to an A in A-level chemistry. So when he reset his exams, he got an A in A-level chemistry, which is what he needed for vet school. And now Harry he's studying small animal. He's studying to be a small animal vet, which is exactly what he wanted. Now, parents, what you need to do is this, and what you need to understand from this live stream is this, is that the first 4 weeks are the most important weeks of your teen's academic career in year 12 and year 13, because it's when the habits are formed, the identity is formed, and it sets them up for good stead for the rest of the academic year, and they have an easier time at it. Now, if you're watching this live stream, if you're on Facebook, and it's on YouTube as well, and you want to be in the know, it's really easy. On Facebook, subscribe to the Facebook business page, and then you'll get notifications of upcoming live streams. Or what you can do is that you can move over to YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and again, not only will you get notifications of upcoming live streams, but you'll also get access to all the other previous live streams that I've done. So parents ask this one, say, well, yeah, Graham, it sounds really good, but you keep mentioning these courses. How do I learn more? Because you're on the internet every week giving us the tips, the techniques, and the strategies that we need in order to help our team be successful in A-level maths and A-level science. Easy. If you're on the Facebook, if you're on YouTube, click the link in the description. It'll take you to a form. You can fill the form out, and a member of my team will reach out to you. And it's a really easy conversation that you have. It's a non-sales call, because what we're going to do is we'll find out where your teen is academically, where the grade is now, what the predicted grade is, what university they want to go to, what they want to be when they graduate from university. And we'll tell you about our courses, what we offer at Empowered STEM, how our courses work. And parents, you can ask all the questions that you want. And then after you've asked your question, after you feel well supported and taken care of, then you can make an informed decision about what you want to do next. Everybody take care, and I'll see you in the next one.